Welcome to I Scream, You Scream, your weekly scoop of the most chilling histories, mysteries, and paranormal perplexities. I'm Kathryn.
I'm Gina.
Every month we choose a new topic and new ice cream flavor to go along with it. This month's topic is demons, and we're going to be eating apple cinnamon ice cream while we tell our stories. So grab a spoon and let's dig in.
I'm so excited about this ice cream, man. I'm going to take a bite.
This is great. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Off to a good start.
Oh, dude.
Well, the good start is just the fact that I showed up with some.
Yeah. Awesome work.
Thank you.
I didn't know how to say that in a way that didn't sound a little...
Wow, good job. You did
but genuinely,
the
yay.
one thing you're supposed to do.
How did you make your ice cream? Walk me through it.
Okay, so I looked up a recipe, and then I was like, no. And then I did oat milk, mixed in some apple cider. Just apple cider and sugar. And then I mixed some cinnamon with chopped up apples, put it in, and then I did a little squirt of caramel sauce.
Caramel apple ice cream? Dude, That's fucking good. That's very, very good. I, too, went down the look up a recipe and say fuck no route.
Yeah.
So I made vanilla ice cream, and separately I made an apple crumble. And then while the vanilla ice cream was churning, I just dumped the apple crumble in there.
Yes.
So it's got like little bits of cinnamony apples. It's got like the oat crumble topping, and it's full of bits.
Perfect.
Which is why earlier, before we hit record, you mentioned that your ice cream was melting. Mine's not, because the ratio of ice cream to bits is like wildly too many bits. So I'm very happy.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of chewing.
Well, I'm not going to tell you what I had planned to add because I'm going to try adding some for the next episode if I have time. I ran out of time today. So, but yeah, this is great.
Oh, I'm really curious. So if you guys have been listening for a while, you might notice a little bit of a change in our tagline that we start the show with. Normally we say histories, mysteries, and true crime. It is now histories, mysteries, and paranormal perplexities. For reasons. Kathryn, what are those reasons?
So, nothing changes, but the reasons are we are now 6 months in, give or take. I don't know what day it is. I think we're 6 months in. And we've just been thinking about how we want to describe what we're doing and what kind of stories we want to tell. And we discovered the types of true crime stories we want to tell fit very nicely into the histories and mysteries categories. And we weren't really being as forthcoming about our obsession with the paranormal perplexities. So we just wanted to mix it up. Literally the only thing that changes is 2 little words with 2 new little words. Stories are going to be the same. Vibe is going to be the same. And yeah, that's it. So don't be alarmed if you were like, what? Am I in the right place? Yes, you definitely are. I also want to address, I'm sick because I can hear myself now. So yeah, that's all that is. I've got like whiskey lounge voice going on right now.
You have the sexy voice, the sexy sick voice.
I love sick voice. Yeah.
I always get mad. If I get sick and I don't get the sick voice, I'll actually get mad about it.
Everyone loves sexy sick voice. But like I always imagine, like I feel like, because it's gotten better. It was definitely way worse, whatever, 2 or 3 days ago. And I just imagine like hearing one thing, but like everyone else is probably hearing this. You know what I mean? Like it's like you probably do not.
There was no
sound
change
like...
in your voice when you did that, Kathryn. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
I do have to say, for the sake of your mental health, your voice sounds way sexier than that.
See, don't make me laugh because I'm going to be coughing through this. Oh, wow, thanks for thinking I sound sexy.
Yes, that's my girl.
I have nothing else. I've been sick for a week. I've been dead to the world for a week.
It's been a disturbingly long time since Kathryn and I have seen each other.
It's been like a few days. Well, no, how long has it?
My God, did we not talk all of last week?
Yeah, I don't see. Yeah, I think it's been over a week.
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay, that actually, you know what?
That's a sizable amount of time.
Yeah, because we were kind of making fun of ourselves, like, oh my god, like we can't go a day without seeing each other. It's been over a week, so like
I don't have anything funny to say. I'm just basking in the sorrow of
I know. I'm
thinking
like,
about being apart.
do we just end there? Is this our transition?
Anyway.
I have to drink my ice cream now.
Chug it.
Love this as a goblet, by the way.
It looks sick as fuck, you just drinking straight from it. Very cool.
I'm gonna make note of that. And I'm ready for your story.
Excellent, because I have prepared a story.
Yay.
Okay. In the early hours of January 14th, 1976, a family of 5 fled their Long Island home after spending 28 days in a living nightmare. After a series of unsettling encounters that crescendoed into one final straw, they piled into the car and left everything behind at 112 Ocean Avenue, never to return. The house, located in the quiet suburb of Amityville, would go on to become one of the most infamous and most hotly debated paranormal cases in American history. Today, we are going to be looking at the twisting, turning, and ultimately baffling circumstances that caused the Lutz family to leave everything behind. So let's start at the beginning. Before they moved into their home at 112 Ocean Avenue, George and Kathy Lutz, who were both 32, had been married for about a year. And they had decided to look for a house for them and their 3 children, who Kathy had had in a previous marriage. So we have Danny, who is 9, Chris, who is 7, and Missy, who was 5. So 3 like small children. And by all accounts, they were like a totally normal family, nothing weird, nothing suspicious. They were just a family of 5 looking for a new house. Specifically, they were looking for a home in the $30,000 to $50,000 price range, which sounds wacky to us today, but like with the conversion rate, that is house buying money. Like it would be 6 figures now. It's on the lower end, but still, it's house money.
I just still can't. I know that. I can't. It would be different if salaries also increased the same amount.
Yeah.
Like my reaction would be different. I don't know.
Yeah.
I already have so much to say. I'm so excited. I love this story. Okay.
So by this point, they had already seen over 50 homes within that price range, and none of them were quite right, which I can't even imagine looking at 50 homes. I think when we were looking for this flat, we did maybe 4 or 5 viewings, and I thought I was about to go insane. So I can't imagine 50.
Oh, we got close to 50 when we were house
Really?
hunting is fucking different,
Different,
man.
yeah.
I was about to say, oh my God, same. And then I thought back to it. We definitely didn't get to 50. I just want to be clear. But like from the very, very start to the very, very end, probably 30, 35.
I guess it's such a commitment, isn't it? It's different than an apartment.
Such a commitment. And there's, and it's different. My experience was not the same as their experience. You know what I mean? House hunting's so different now. Back then, you could go back and see the same house 3 or 4 times and sit around and decide. That's true. And eventually come back. You know what I mean? So that is a lot for then. Nowadays, I'm like, I know people who've put 50 offers on 50 houses. You know what I mean? Like it's just
that's
different.
A good point. That's a good point.
So yeah, actually, yeah, that's quite a bit for how much easier it was to buy a house back then.
Yeah. It was quite a bit. So when Edith Evans from Conlin Realty Office told them about a 3-story house with 6 bedrooms, a heated pool, and a boathouse on the Amityville River, they just had to see it. The only catch was that it was out of their price range at $80,000. But they kind of figured like it couldn't hurt to take a look, you know? So they headed over to 112 Ocean Avenue, which winds up becoming the famous Amityville house. If you haven't put that together for me saying that address.
Surprise!
And once they saw it, it was pretty much a done deal. The Lutzes were all in, despite the price tag and the warnings that they received about the house's history. Before Kathy and George moved their family into the home, they were told that the house had been the site of the infamous DeFeo family murders, wherein 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo Jr., aka Butch, used a high-powered rifle to kill his parents and all 4 of his siblings around 3:15 a.m. on November 13th, 1974. His parents were named Ronald Sr. and Louise DeFeo, both 43 at the time of death. And his siblings were 18-year-old Dawn, 13-year-old Allison, 12-year-old Mark, and 9-year-old John.
Oh my God.
And these murders were just riddled with really weird circumstances. So all 6 victims were found lying face down in their beds with no sign of a struggle whatsoever, and none of the neighbors had heard any gunshots, which makes no sense. And also, even the not waking up thing, you might think, oh, they might have been sedated or drugged or something like that. Autopsies revealed 0 drugs like that in their system.
Just quick question, just refresh me. There was 4 people told. How many people did he kill?
6.
6?
So 2
Okay.
parents, 4 siblings.
Okay, that's what
Yeah.
yeah. But, and
so it's a lot.
You can't get through 6 people without the other ones hearing. That's a lot of gunshots to sleep through if you're in the same house.
It's so weird. Yeah. So to this day, we are not sure how Butch did this alone. And the idea of him having an accomplice in this has been floated for a long time, but ultimately they never found anybody else. They never charged anybody else. So when it wound up going to trial, Butch was represented by a lawyer named William Weber, who we will come back to later. And he pled not guilty by reason of insanity, saying that he heard demonic voices telling him to kill his family. Jury didn't buy it, though, because Butch's story changed a million times, and they wound up sentencing him to 6 consecutive life sentences. The DeFeo family home really quickly became kind of an infamous murder house, and it sat empty for almost a year until George and Kathy Lutz decided that they didn't mind living there. And even though the house was outside of their budget, it was too good of a deal to pass up. So they made an offer and it was accepted.
I get it.
Yeah, I get it too. The Lutzes moved into the house on December 18th, 1975. And what truly happened next, we will probably never know. The story of what the Lutz family went through has been told so many times across so many different types of media, and all of the details are never quite the same. But one thing that happens in almost every version of the story is that while they were in the process of moving in, George and Kathy brought in a Catholic priest named Father Pecoraro to bless the house. Now, apparently, Pecoraro knew right away that something wasn't right. He just had this gut feeling when he got there that something in the house was just rotten, bad vibes. But he sucked it up and he went room by room doing the whole blessing thing. And when Pecoraro entered the sewing room, he was in the process of blessing it when he heard a masculine voice from behind him say, "Get out." But when he turned, no one was there.
Classic.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Pecoraro was obviously super freaked out by this. He allegedly just rushed out of the house without telling George and Kathy what he heard. And that sewing room that he was in, that used to be John and Mark DeFeo's room, the 2 brothers who were murdered. So, ghosts and spirits and whatnot. Okay.
Yeah.
So, the move-in proceeded as planned, and once the family was settled, things got even weirder almost immediately. The entire family's personalities started to kind of shift by a few degrees once they moved in. Everyone was a little bit more tense, a little bit more irritable, and this change was the most noticeable in George, the dad. He had always been this kind of hardworking, well-kept guy who really took care of himself, cared about his work ethic and his appearance. But once they moved in, all of that kind of started going out the window. He stopped caring as much about work. He stopped caring as much about his appearance, just things that were not like him and were so the opposite of who he normally is that it was noticeable and weird. So a few days after Christmas, and this is barely a week after the Lutzes moved in, Kathy was in the kitchen when she said she felt something come up from behind her and embrace her, like it was holding her from behind. And it started patting her hand. This is super fucking weird and scary, but she doesn't describe it as a scary encounter. She says that she actually felt kind of comforted by it.
Yeah, the hand pat
Yeah.
is comforting.
Mm-hmm.
potentially.
So it's whilst she was in the embrace of whatever this thing was, her son Chris started screaming from upstairs. So motherly instinct kicks in. She like sprints upstairs. She finds Chris in the upstairs bathroom. And her other son, Danny, was in there as well. And they were staring down at the toilet. And when she looked in it, she saw that the bowl had turned completely black.
Ew.
Mm-hmm. So one of her sons, Danny, goes to the other upstairs bathroom. I think he was just trying to get like cleaning supplies to try and clean this weird black toilet. And he saw that that toilet in the other bathroom had turned black too. And not just that, it had a foul fucking odor. It smelled so bad. The three of them kind of start running around trying to open up the windows, air out the house. And when Kathy entered the sewing room, she saw that the windows were completely covered in flies. Which, like, fine. Maybe you have like a fly problem. That's, whatever. But it was the East Coast in the middle of December. Flies are not out and about.
Even if you have flies, like a fly problem like that is not fine. Like
It's
black
not normal.
toilets and flies, even if it's not demonic, it is minimum absolutely repugnant and something needs a fixin'.
Yeah. Fucked up and gross.
Yeah.
Not long after that, George was putting their daughter Missy to bed, and they were chatting about her imaginary friend named Jody, who, according to Missy...
Immediately no. Immediately no. No.
Oh, you're not going to like this
not.
one.
No. Absolutely not.
So,
no. All right, continue. So sorry.
So her imaginary friend Jody, according to Missy, this Jody was a pig, which is actually kind of cute. And George didn't really...
So cute.
It's such
but
like
also
a little
demonic.
Kid, I'll get there.
Continue. I'm sorry.
But like us, George isn't really thinking anything of it because she's 5. And so it's like completely normal behavior for her to have an imaginary friend or whatever. And as George was tucking her in, Missy pointed to the window and said, "There he is. That's Jody. He wants to come in." So George turned and says that he saw, with the full moon shining behind it, 2 red eyes staring back at him. George heard a shriek come from behind him, and then he turned to see Kathy rush into the room, like run in. She picked up one of Missy's little like play chairs, like those little chairs that are made for kids, and Kathy flung it at the window, breaking the window and hitting whatever this thing was. And whatever it was, it let out like a noise of pain, and then suddenly it was gone.
Ew.
Shortly after that, George says that he saw hoof prints in the snow outside Missy's window, but they were only going away from the house. And more than that, the prints looked like they were made by an animal walking on 2 legs. Demon behavior.
Gross.
One night in early January, Kathy and George were in their bed. Kathy was asleep. George was, still up. When all of a sudden, Kathy started levitating off of the bed. George...
Casual.
I know. Imagine if that happened to Phil or Tom.
So this is why, you're just rolling through all these things, and I'm still like, the toilet was black. What the fuck?
I know.
Here's the thing. Immediately I'm always like, just fucking leave. I would leave. You gotta leave a situation like this. My house is haunted as fuck. I know for a fact I wouldn't actually leave because you don't just buy a house and 2 weeks later you leave because some weird stuff is happening. But hearing these stories is what, she's just casually levitating now? That's not a thing that happens. You can explain stuff away, but if I woke up and Phil was levitating, immediately no. Immediately no. Straight up, don't care what time of night it was, I would find myself a priest and I would go. I would just be like, peace out, Phil. It's been fun, but absolutely not. So sorry.
I do think I would let Tom levitate for a while. I would stop it, but I would want to see where he's going,
I would no, I would literally be like, get your ass back in bed. We are not doing this today.
Well, okay,
absolutely not.
George had the same exact reaction as you. He immediately tried to grab for her.
Pulled her? Okay.
Yeah, but he found that he couldn't move or speak.
God damn it. Okay.
He was paralyzed. Yeah.
Ugh.
So Kathy, who was like levitating at this point, slowly starts moving as if she's being pulled to their bedroom closet. And before she gets there, while George is watching, she kind of slips, like it's as if something dropped her, and she just crumbles to the floor.
Okay.
And that's kind of the end of that encounter.
She was like let go.
Yeah, she was just let go. And then George could move again and like, fucking freaky though.
Ooh.
So by this point, they've been there for a few weeks. It's pretty clear to George and Kathy that this house is haunted as fuck. So they go to the Amityville Historical Society to see, okay, maybe there's something else in the history that we missed. Maybe other people have had similar experiences. Let's just like do some digging and see what we can find. They allegedly found that the land that the house was built on was used by the Shinnecock tribe as a holding area for people who were sick or dying. Apparently, the Shinnecocks didn't use it as a burial ground because they thought it was infested with demons.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll get there.
Okay.
Just go along with it.
I've never heard this. Yeah, I've never heard that part of the story. Interesting.
So, like, great. They have this information. Didn't know what they were going to do with it, but, like, at least they knew now,
Yeah.
A few days before the Lutzes would abandon their home, they said that there was this really, really, really bad storm, which left them with 10 broken windows, rainwater stains all over the walls, all over the furniture, everywhere. Plus, the locks on 2 of the rooms had been twisted so badly because of the storm that the doors could no longer be shut. And one of these was the sewing room.
Wait. How does that happen? How does that happen? Okay. So I'm not just unintelligent. No. That's weird, right?
No, yes.
Okay.
You are right to be having the feelings that you're having. Yes.
Thank you. I was like, do I ask? Do people know this, or is this part of the weirdness? Okay, so sorry. I questioned my intelligence there for a second. Okay,
Despite all of this, none of their neighbors suffered any damage from the storm at all. And all of this weirdness kind of came to a head on January 14th, 1976. By this point, the disturbances were constant. Doors would slam shut and open at random hours. There were incessant cold spots, no matter how high they cranked the heat. There were weird instances of like green goo dripping down the walls, out through the keyholes. The family had also, this is one of my favorite things ever, they had started to hear the phantom sounds of a marching band coming from their living room, which is wild.
Why?
I know. Imagine an entire marching band haunting you. And they also reported being constantly woken up by things at 3:15 in the morning, the same time the DeFeo family murders took place. And the night leading up to January 14th was no different. George woke up to, again, what sounded like a marching band in their downstairs living room. But it had voices underneath the music. Not loud enough where you could hear what the voices were saying, but loud enough that you could tell someone was saying something. Lightning started flashing outside the house. The bed started shaking. And George found that once again, he was completely paralyzed and he couldn't move or speak. Now, at this time, his entire family was in the bed with George and Kathy because it was scary times. So all of the kids just like got into bed with them. And as George lay there, unable to move, he said he felt what he described as hooves walking across him towards his family. So he realized what was happening, that there was maybe this thing coming for his kids and his wife. And so he had this crazy burst of adrenaline where he just like forced himself out of this paralysis, grabbed his kids and Kathy, and just ran for the stairs, where they saw a figure dressed in white pointing at them. So they immediately were like, fuck that. And they sprinted right past it, which like relatable. Totally. Yeah. Would do the same. They ran right outside. They piled into the car and they got the ever loving fuck out of there. In total, they were only in the house for 28 days and they never even returned to collect their stuff, which was later auctioned off.
That always like blows my mind. There are many haunted house stories out there, kind of an alarmingly high number of stories like that where there are families that will just bounce and like not even care to return. I'm like, damn, that's how you know it's bad. Like,
Yeah.
because I'd like to think I'd at least, like, we have a lot of crap, you know? I
Yeah.
would come back during the day with, like, protection. Yeah, I would struggle. I would
Yeah.
definitely struggle. I mean, it's gotten to the point now where knowing how much time it would take to wrangle both Cinnamon and Spooky, the reality is I would get nothing. I would literally not have time to
Yeah.
get any, like, physical object because just getting Cinnamon would be, I mean, that would take
Yeah.
more than enough time. You know what I
They
mean?
did
So
have a
it's
dog,
like,
actually. I didn't mention this, but they did have a dog. His name was Harry. He went
oh,
with
I
them when they
didn't know
left.
that. I never knew
Mm-hmm.
that they had a dog.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was there any, like, weird stuff with him? Like, did
Oh,
he?
yes.
Okay.
There are a few weird things with Harry. So at one point, George reported that he saw out of the window like a shadowy figure hanging out by the boathouse. And so he did what like any dog owning person would do and kind of let the dog out to go kind of sniff around and kind of
Yeah,
fucking
for
like
sure.
scope out the area for you. And when the shadowy figure, I think it like ducked behind the boathouse or something. And so George said, like, get him, Harry, like, go get him. And the guy was gone. And Harry never found him. Another
Ugh.
thing, so one thing that they found that was interesting about 112 Ocean Avenue is that there was a hidden room that didn't appear on any of the blueprints. It's known these days as the Red Room. And it was kind of just a little storage unit in the basement. It was called the Red Room because it had red paint all over it. Allegedly, Harry would not fucking go near that room, and he was also really sketched out by the sewing room.
I wonder if that's because that happens in that Haunting of Hill House show, I believe.
I never saw that.
Don't ever. You should never see that.
Thank
show.
you. I know.
That was like.
Thank you for validating me because every time someone's
Yeah.
like, I talk about it, everyone's like, "Oh, you can handle it," and I'm like, "You don't
could
get
not
it. I
handle
can't."
No, you can't.
Thank
and
you.
that's not any shade or anything. That was.
I'm saying
that
thank you
fucked me up.
genuinely. Like,
Yeah, no, that fucked me up. So we'll talk about this another time.
Can never watch
Phenomenal,
that
and
show.
also don't watch it.
No, I won't ever. Thank you.
but they have a red room in that movie, and I wonder if that was the inspiration.
Yeah. I would probably bet money that it is because the Amityville haunting has inspired so fucking much.
Yeah.
Like books, movies, everything.
It's like ingrained in so much, and like the references are so, yeah. Anyway, sorry, continue. That just,
yeah. So they got the hell out of there with Harry the dog. And a few weeks later, they met William Weber at a party. He was the guy who represented Butch DeFeo that we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And over the course of conversation, it came out that Weber was interested in collaborating with the Lutzes on writing a book about the DeFeo murders and their experience living in the house. As kind of a side note, he was already in the process of working on an appeal for Butch by this point. So he kind of thought, like, if we write this book, maybe it could help with his defense. Kind of like Butch wasn't the only one seeing things and hearing things in the house. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, I
don't know, lawyered, whatever. I don't get how it works.
Yeah.
In mid-February, like a month after they had left the house, Weber organized a press conference with the Lutzes where he said they were considering a new motion in Butch's trial due to certain facts presented by the Lutzes, i.e., there's a demon in this house that made my client kill someone. Classic. Now, George and Kathy, in this press conference, didn't publicly elaborate on any details at this point. Honestly, they had been pretty quiet about their experiences in general, up to this point anyway. And even when they were living in the house, they didn't really tell a whole lot of people what was going on. So when the press got involved, the Lutzes basically just said, like, paraphrasing here, but we experienced some weird shit that made us scared for our family's safety. And that was kind of it. And this vagueness, this lack of specificity is really what got people's attention, including a local news channel who wanted to investigate the home. George and Kathy gave their permission, but they said they wouldn't be joining them, which I get.
Yeah.
And a few weeks later, on March 6th, 1976, a team of investigators entered the home, headed up by none other than the infamous duo of Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. We will probably at some point do an entire episode on the Warrens, or at the very least, like, they will play a role in many of the episodes that we're going to do. But for the purposes of this story, here's what you need to know if you are not familiar with the Warrens. So Ed and Lorraine were a husband and wife team of paranormal investigators. Ed styled himself as a demonologist. Lorraine claimed she was a clairvoyant and a medium. And they're kind of household names within the paranormal community, but not always for good reasons. They're often accused of things like sensationalizing, fabricating, or just straight up lying about things and stories that they helped publicize. In a lot of circles, they're actually considered to be more like really skilled performers than credible investigators. So, as always, grain of salt, especially where the Warrens are concerned. When they entered the home, Lorraine almost immediately said she felt a very dark energy that the Warrens would later describe as the quote, personification of evil. They took several photos of the house over the course of their investigation, and one in particular has become really, really famous because it's really fucking creepy. I'm actually going to text it to you. I don't know if you've seen it before.
I was going to say, I probably have, but I don't know what one you're talking about.
Okay. I'm going to send it.
I hope I've seen it.
For anyone who is anyone who I'm not texting. So it's like this picture of what looks to be a child staring blankly at the camera from the bottom of a staircase, and his eyes are like bright white, like it's really creepy,
like glowing, and it's like and he's looking kind of like this,
like it's like super
not
creepy
just
picture.
Casual. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the Warrens claimed that this was the ghost of John DeFeo, one of the DeFeo brothers, who was only 9 years old when his brother murdered him. The team wound up performing several seances in the home, and they concluded that there was a demon at play, and they even implied that the house might contain some kind of portal to hell. And there's some speculation that that red room that we talked about earlier was the portal. There were a few other investigations into the house as well. Some agreed with the Warrens that something was up, but it is worth noting that at least 2 groups independent of the Warrens declined to investigate due to what they called a lack of observable data. Interesting. As a side note, because I thought it was funny, one of the investigators would later attend a screening of the movie when it came out, and he said, quote, "The 2 hours I spent watching the film with a rowdy, disruptive, pot-smoking audience was much more of a horror than the 6 hours I spent in the house in Amityville."
Oh my goodness. Wow.
1-star review from this guy. Oh, it was really funny.
Yeah. My goodness. Yeah. I loved that movie. Sorry.
Well, just the thought that like an excitable, stoned audience is worse than a demon. Come on.
Yeah.
I liked it. So curmudgeon-y. Anyway, so back to 1976. At this point, Weber and the Lutzes are still a team. But things were about to get even messier. Enter William Weber with a bottle of wine and a book deal. So the honeymoon period really didn't last long. The Lutzes parted ways with Weber after they got into an argument about how the money from the book deal would be split. Weber wanted to give the Lutzes 24% of the book's profits, and the Lutzes, who had actually lived through this, thought that they should get less than a quarter of the proceeds. Anyway, by all accounts, they didn't part on great terms. It was a very fuck you situation. So the Lutzes instead decided to approach a journalist and a filmmaker. His name was Jay Anson, and he wound up writing the now famous book, The Amityville Horror, A True Story. And he did it for an even split of the profits. So, pretty good deal.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a good split.
Yeah. The book's title became a little bit problematic, though. It's one thing to write a book. It's another thing to call it a true story, especially when the writer, Anson, was kind of known to artfully embellish things that he probably shouldn't. Robert Bartholomew, who is a sociologist specializing in mass hysteria, described Anson as, quote, "a writer who didn't let the facts get in the way of a good story," if that tells you anything. Anson, of course, has a slightly different version of events. In an interview with Writer's Digest in 1979, he said, "I have no idea whether the book is true or not, but I'm sure that the Lutzes believe what they told me to be true," which is an important point of distinction, you know.
Yeah, I get that. I feel like we've talked about that in quite a few of our stories.
And we'll get more into that in a second. But regardless, the book was published in 1977, and it was almost immediately and immensely popular. Went on to sell millions and millions and millions of copies worldwide. It has since grown into a franchise of something like 17 movies, hundreds of copycats. I mean, everyone's heard of Amityville. It's fucking massive, and it starts with this book, media-wise anyway. But despite the book's popularity, it was also met with some very intense criticism. Publication after publication started calling out discrepancies in Anson's version of events. For one thing, the whole thing with the full moon shining behind Jody the pig couldn't have been true, because on the night the Lutzes said that it happened, it was actually a 3/4 moon. Not to be that guy, but
Not to be that guy.
And also,
Okay.
on the night when George said that he saw hoof prints in the snow, there was no snow on the ground. And another thing, the storm that the Lutzes reported had like fucked up their doors and broken a bunch of windows was not strong enough to do any of the things that they described by a long shot. According to the New York Times, the winds that night were only about 10 to 12 miles per hour, which on the Beaufort scale is enough to make leaves and twigs kind of move around. But that's it. Definitely not enough to like crack a window or damage anything, really. So cracks are starting to show. Anson responded to all of this criticism by saying, "They say that on such and such a day when I said it rained, it didn't rain. So what? I'm a perfectly normal human being, and sometimes I make mistakes." Which is
Wait,
all well and
which one said
good.
that?
Anson, so the writer, the guy who wrote the book,
Okay.
which is like, fine, I get that. But when you have a book that literally says in the title, a true story,
Yeah.
that creates some issues. And also what's interesting to me about that quote from Anson is that he's taking ownership of the Amityville narrative, and he's not referencing the Lutzes in any of it. It's not George and Kathy made mistakes, it's I make mistakes.
So that was my initial response. That's kind of, I think that's why I asked who said it, because I was like, why the fuck is he saying he was wrong? Like, my thought would be, this is me like devil's advocating here. The 3/4 moon one, I'm like, okay, that one I can slide. 3/4 moon, full moon, what's the fucking difference when we're talking about light shine, not like, you know.
And like, yeah, maybe it wasn't the moon. Maybe it was in like a different visual phenomenon that you were seeing, you know?
Right. Like, who knows? Maybe it was like light from the lake house or whatever it was, or boathouse or whatever. Then, shoot, what was the other one? I had this all like, I got distracted. So the storm one, that one actually makes me think like, all that does to me is like, that's more evidence for demonic activity, because like, okay, yeah, so the storm wasn't strong enough, therefore it was probably a demon. You know what I mean? So that one, I'm on their side with that one. The other one, what was the third one? I'm so sorry.
There was no snow on the ground when he said he saw the hooves.
Okay, so that one's weird. I do wonder. So one of the things I was gonna say is a little bit of a tangent, but I get so stressed out when, you know, in like court cases and all that kind of stuff, you have to like remember dates.
Yeah.
I'm like, what if I accidentally say I was doing something Wednesday, but it actually was Thursday? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
That to me is like, okay, well, could he have just accidentally said a different night? Was it the night before? Like, was there snow on the ground the night before and then it melted? Or like, you know, did it not snow until the next night or whatever? In a situation like this, I understand, like, you remember the day you moved in. You only lived there for 28 days. I feel like that's a little bit smaller room for error. I don't know. Not defending them. They could very well have been making it up, and I don't know. But none of those things are enough for me to be like, oh my God, they lied.
Yeah.
The weirdest thing about that to me is the fact that he was the one saying, oh, I was wrong. Because, like, well, why were you the one saying it? Like, you weren't, were you? You know what I mean?
Totally same. The next bullet point that I have is I can see how all of these things could be true at once. Like, complete and total same page.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's like, yeah, maybe it was a 3/4 moon. And also, who fucking cares? Like, that doesn't change the story at all.
Like, the whole point of paranormal encounters is that empirical evidence is really hard to come by.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense. That's what makes it paranormal. Right. Totally. So yeah, like, not really sure what's going on. And even the investigations into the Lutzes, seemed plagued by like just weird circumstances. So, a 1979 Writer's Digest article by a guy named William Slattery about the book itself said that the weirdness just didn't stop. Before I tell you this part, I do want to caveat that I haven't seen any of this bit referenced or discussed in any other source. And the article that I pulled it from was just chock full of bias. So instead of like just one grain of salt, maybe use the whole shaker this time. Like really
Okay.
go
Got
gadget
lots
critical
of salt
thinking is what
over
I'm
here.
saying. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So he said that 2 reporters from People magazine were on their way to interview Anson about the book when their car caught fire as it sat outside the Amityville house, and the smoke from the cars was orange. I don't know much about cars. I don't think that's normal. He also said that on separate occasions, at least 2 reporters scheduled to go on TV to debunk the story mysteriously called in sick at the last second. That one I'm not like as suspicious of because people get sick and also
Yeah.
maybe someone didn't want them telling that story. But,
Mm-hmm.
and these are the ones that I'm like, this is fucking weird. There are even accounts of weird things happening to people who had early copies of the book's manuscript. So one woman brought a copy of the manuscript home only for her house to catch on fire that night. The only
Whoa.
thing left unharmed was the manuscript.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird.
In another kind of instance, a man had a copy of the manuscript in the trunk of his car, and he did the thing. I know I'm saying the thing. I've never done this. But he did a thing where he drove through what he thought was a puddle, and it wound up being this really deep hole full of water. So his car
I'm
kind of
so
fell
scared
into
of that happening.
same. Oh my
Oh,
God.
I'm
One of my
so
worst
afraid of
fears.
that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the next day, they fished the car out of this like ginormous puddle thing. The whole thing was filled with water. The only
God.
dry object in the car, the manuscript.
The fuck?
But when it comes to the actual experiences of the Lutzes, there is even more damning pieces of evidence too. So the famous picture that the Warrens took, the one that we looked at earlier, turns out it was a hoax and it's been debunked. It was actually just a member of their team who was kneeling and wearing glasses, which caused the glare that we see.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
Yep.
Oh, that's strange. I thought it was just like one of their sons or something like that
It
they
was just like a grown-ass man.
Oh my God.
Which is weird because it looks like a kid.
It does look like a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, poor guy.
Yeah. Also, the local Catholic diocese denied ever being involved with blessing the house. And upon asking, the Amityville Historical Society said that there was no evidence that the land had ever been used by the Shinnecock tribe in any way.
Okay.
Weber
Interesting.
himself went on record saying that the whole thing was a hoax. He said that he and the Lutzes had designed the tale over, quote, many bottles of wine, and that they used aspects of the DeFeo case to make shit up for the paranormal activity elements. He also said that the Lutzes were specifically interested in, quote, developing the demonism aspect of the case. According to Weber, he told the Lutzes that a neighbor's cat would often look in through the DeFeo's family's windows, which became Jody the pig. He also said that Butch DeFeo's father had once smacked his mom while she was holding a plate of spaghetti, and that had become the mysterious goo on the walls and in the keyholes. He also claimed that the Lutzes had made the entire thing up for financial gain because they bought a house that was beyond their means and they were struggling to pay their bills. Mm-hmm. So Bartholomew, that sociologist I mentioned earlier, he also thinks that the Lutzes agreed to do this for financial gain. He says, quote, the Amityville myth persists in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. It is starkly obvious that it's a hoax, but people still want to believe. The Lutzes, however, never ever went back on their story. George has said, quote, and this gets to like what we were talking about earlier, because I totally agree with it. If we had tried to perpetuate some kind of hoax, I think we would have been much surer of when and how things happened because we would have been inventing them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally.
Like this whole time as you were describing it, I was like, oh my God, these guys totally tricked me. Like they tricked all of us, blah, blah, blah. But I'm also like, honestly, same. Like I would be, I don't know. I'm such a bad liar that like I would be so obsessive about memorizing everything and getting everything right that it would just, yeah, I don't know.
To hold up under for years under such intense media scrutiny, like even if
Yeah.
they were lying, if the whole thing is a hoax, that is kind of impressive that they are able to like stay strong for that long. Like, damn.
Honestly, listen, let's say it is a hoax. Let's like just for argument's sake, it's a hoax. That's really impressive because here we are a zillion years later talking about whether or not it is a hoax. You know what I mean? Like that's a pretty successful hoax if you ask me. So I'm almost like kind of hope it wasn't real because that's a lot more impressive than
I
if it
know.
was.
Yeah.
I think.
And
I don't know.
the Lutz family wound up taking a polygraph test in 1979 and they passed. The polygraph, I have a quote from the polygraph specialist. He was a guy named Chris Gugas, and he said, they were pretty frightened, and it took us nearly 2 hours to get them calmed down. But what they told us, they believed.
That's why that's such an important distinction because, like, if you genuinely believe something is happening to you, whether or not it really is happening, it's still not a lie because, like, you genuinely believe it's happening, you know?
Yeah. I know polygraphs aren't, watertight, but it's just
Yeah.
instances of it's just such a conflict of like one side saying yes it's true and the other side saying like no it's absolutely not, and there just seems to be zero gray area that people operate within in this story. So we're kind of coming up on the end here. The house on Ocean Avenue has since had multiple owners. None of them have reported any strange encounters at all. The main problem now is actually, or it used to be, people coming to see it as a tourist attraction. There were
Yeah.
reports that people would stand outside for just hours. They would knock on the door asking for Butch DeFeo, like just all kinds of fucked up shit.
Yeah.
The house has actually been renumbered now to stop horror fans and ghost hunters from, stalking it, basically. And it's been sold at least 4 times since the murders. The last time it was sold was in 2016 for, ready for this price jump? $850,000.
Oh, that's actually way less than I thought it was. I
Mm.
thought it was going to be in the million. I thought it was going to be like 1 point something million.
I wonder if they take some off because it's kind of like,
Well,
I don't
at
really want
this
to live
point, I'm
there.
shocked that people are still like trying to live there.
Yeah, and it's gone under some pretty serious refurbishments since then. Like the are you familiar with like the famous windows that they had that kind of looked like eyes?
Listen, I wasn't going to try to hijack this, but I'm so familiar with it that I, as a child, when I saw that movie, was like, who would ever choose to purchase a Dutch colonial home? They're like traditionally, they're notoriously haunted. Guess what, bitch? Purchased a Dutch colonial year and a half ago.
But it's beautiful and haunted.
Didn't mean to. Didn't mean to. Similar shape,
Yeah.
not the same windows, but we've got the whole like that's part of the style is like the prominent windows and the like gabled fronts or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, so the ones
Yeah,
that looked
yeah.
like
Go ahead.
eyes, I'm pretty sure those are gone now. A
Okay,
lot of the house has like kind of
that's
changed.
like a main. Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
that would take care of a lot of like the tourist aspect of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So yeah, whether or not you believe the Lutzes story is really none of my business. But I do kind of wonder if the whole situation is more complex than just a binary true or false. George Lutz once said, quote, I have never thought of my life story as being a big property. I don't control it. I don't have any say in the publishing rights. I didn't sell the movie rights or the pre-sale or the advertising. All I know is what happened to me. So whether it was a demon, a haunting, a hoax, or something in between in that murky gray area I love so much, Amityville has become more than just a scary story. To me, it's a cautionary tale about how stories, especially the ones that we want to believe, really can take on a life of their own. And sometimes they hurt a lot more than they help. That said, I would love, absolutely love to hear everyone else's take on this story. So we have a submission link in the show notes. I would really love if you guys told me what you make. Tell me what you make of all of this because I want to talk about it. I didn't really know much about Amityville before this, and now I want to know everything. And yeah,
Yeah,
that's all I
Amityville's
got.
wild. I love that. That was one of the first horror movies I ever saw. I had a thing for James Brolin in that movie.
James Brolin.
That's the whole thought. That's the whole thought.
When I was researching this, I felt like it was my duty to watch the movie. And so I told Tom one night, like, I think.
Did you watch it?
So no.
Okay, I was going to say, well, no. Sorry, continue.
Well, the end of the story is that I told Tom that I wanted to watch it, and he was like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "No."
So, yeah, so I was going to say, not recommending it to you, but as far as like horror movies are concerned, I feel like 70s horror movies, they're so good. I don't care what anyone says. That's just such a great era of horror movies, and they're so much gentler visually than like the really terrible, graphic, gross, gory kind of stuff. Not everything. There's some gnarly stuff. I'm thinking like stuff like Amityville, like something that would kind of fit in the confines of like a whatever vintage slasher or whatever. I guess this wouldn't be a slasher, but classic haunted house. It's not. I haven't seen it in a long time. How about I rewatch it and I'll let you know what I think?
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'll do that because now that we're talking about it, I really want to watch it anyway.
Sweet. Okay. Let me know if I could handle it. I feel like older movies don't scare me as much as newer movies. I hate to say it, but a lot of it is because of like the effects. They're just not as realistic.
I don't think they're, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I think that the further away you, like there was once upon a time, Dracula circa like 1930 whatever was like the most horrifying movie ever, and now we look at it and we're like, oh ha ha ha. I remember when the remake came out with who was it, right? Was it Ryan Gosling?
Was that the one that was? Are you talking about Dracula or Amityville?
Sorry, I'm back to Amityville.
Oh, I have no idea.
It came out in like 2008 or something like that. I remember that one being way scarier just because it was newer and everyone was like, oh my God, remakes. That was like in the era where remakes really did suck. So everyone was like, oh my God, it's not scary. Blah, blah, blah. It's not good. As they do anytime anything's remade. And I remember being, oh yeah, totally. That sucked. And like being absolutely horrified.
See, I remember, I don't know why I did this. But I was really into the movie Insidious when I was a teenager.
Oh my God, that movie terrified me.
I loved it. And I'm the biggest scaredy cat in the world. I've never been into scary movies in any way, shape, or form. And for whatever reason, that movie and Silence of the Lambs are like the two where I'm fine for some reason.
Okay, Silence of the Lambs is not scary to me, but it's scary. That's the scariest movie my mom has ever seen in her life, besides Dawn of the Dead, which she accidentally saw. And we accidentally just gave her PTSD. She's covering her ears right now as she watches us.
But that happened to me with is it The Evil Dead? Is that what it's called?
God, I cannot believe you. So that's the one I was going to say, like, when I said, 70s movies aren't scary. That's the one when I kind of took it back a little bit. That's the one I thought of because I was like,
I didn't know what I was getting into.
Yeah, I'm shocked you saw that movie.
It was on a date. I didn't know any better.
The visuals in that. What's his name? I always forget his name and I feel so bad, but the special effects makeup guy for that one is just so huge. It like, is it Tom Savini? Did he do it? Let me see. Yeah, Tom Savini. Okay, so he was in a documentary we were watching and I didn't know this. He took a lot of his inspiration from like, I think Vietnam.
Ooh.
And like all the gore he experienced there. I hate to call it that, but like all the trauma, I'm going to say, inspired a lot of his gore. And that's why it's so like realistic and gnarly because like he like really saw those things. Isn't that awful? Yeah. But so talented. I mean, I feel like he's one of those guys where I feel like you like know when you see his style, there's a specific style that he has, and it's just next level gross, but in kind of a weird way. I don't know. I'm shocked you've seen Evil Dead. I would never recommend that to you ever.
Did not mean to.
Okay, that makes so much more sense. But I think, like, I do think there is a subgenre for you that there have been many psychological horrors that I'm like,
psychological horror. I'm pretty okay with.
See, but this is the thing. That is the most terrifying thing to me. And you're like, oh, well, yeah, sure.
Fine.
It's like, girl, you cannot say you will not watch horror and then be like, oh, well, that's fine. That's the worst one.
Well, wait, okay. Let's make sure we're talking about this. Like, what are some examples of like psychological horror movies?
That's a good question because I think of it as I watch them and I don't have
Okay.
a
Because the one
like
that always comes to mind for like is Shutter Island a psychological horror, or is that just like a psychological thriller?
um so I think as far as a genre is concerned, like publicly, I think people would consider that a thriller.
Okay.
I would not argue that it is also a horror.
Because it's very scary.
I
Well,
think
not very
so.
scary, but it has
I
scary
mean, yeah.
parts.
I think that so I would consider that a thriller. I also uh I think the differentiator is really just style,
Mm.
like movie making style, you know? But there are movies that okay, so the fact that like you weren't freaked out by Insidious has been like it is on the list of like one of the scariest movies. Now, I'm referring to the study that they did that measured like heart rate and they have a couple of
Oh.
really big jump scares in there, which
Mm.
I do not like. I hate a jump scare so much. Like I feel like if you're fine with that one, there's got to
But
be so many others that you'd be
I
fine
don't
with
know if I
too.
would be fine with it now because I liked it a lot when I
Yeah.
was like 15 and thought I would never die, and I haven't watched it since then.
Isn't that so funny? I was thinking of that the other day. Sorry, we're getting like so off topic. I'm so sorry. But like this is also I think relevant because like I was thinking of it because we're doing Demon Month and I don't know what triggered this thought. I must have just been working on one of my stories or something like that. And I have lived my whole life actively not believing in demons, but I've always lived my life as if demons are real just in case. I do that
Just
with a
in
lot of
case, yeah.
things. And the older I get, I was thinking back to the conversation we had on the podcast previously, where it's like the older I get, the more I just believe and more because nothing fucking matters. And I was like, demons is like the category of demons is one that I still don't know if I believe in demons because if I said I believed in demons, I'd have to like admit that I got to go back to church. Like, and I don't want to have to go back to church every Sunday. So I'm like, there's constantly this push and pull of like, do I believe this because I genuinely believe it? Or do I believe it because I'm just scared? And like,
Hmm.
when you're scared, you do weird things and you say weird things and you believe weird things. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. These are the thoughts I have now that we have this podcast because I'm like, I don't
I also
know.
don't know what my relationship is with belief when it comes to demons, but I have a feeling I'm going
Yeah.
to spend the next month figuring it out, and
Yeah.
we can go on that journey together.
Excellent. Anyway, so that's the story of Amityville.
Yes, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, that was great. I love the story of Amityville. That's just such a classic. But I feel
And there's
like every
so
time I
much
hear it,
to
there's
it.
more to like. There's some. I don't even want to say
Yes.
more, but just different. Like things like pop up that
Yeah.
I've
Like
never heard before. You know.
if you guys enjoyed this episode, there is so much more out there that you can find. Like, highly encourage you do some creative googling, read some old records, read the book. It's
I
a
went. Did you
huge
read the
ass fucking
book?
rabbit hole. I read parts of the book. I didn't have time to read the whole
Okay.
thing.
I totally forgot there was a book. I remember hearing about it years ago and being like, "Ooh, I gotta read that." And when you said you were doing Amityville,
Yeah.
I just completely forgot about
It's
it.
not super long. I think it's like 300 something pages. And the way that it's told is very, I can't remember the word for it off the top of my head, but it's told as if it's told like narrative.
Yeah.
I don't want to say
Okay.
narrative fiction, but it's like, it's not like a nonfiction book, like a biography might be, where it's really dry and there's not much
Uh-huh.
interpretation. Like it was artistically done by a man who may have lied about the whole thing.
Sweet. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Until next time, little spoons. Keep it cool.
Keep it creepy.